It was a cold December night in Austin, Texas, 1991. Christmas lights twinkled, but on this night something terrible was about to shatter the peace. Imagine a place you know well, a neighborhood shop, a place filled with the sweet smell of frozen yogurt. Now imagine that place transformed into a scene of unimaginable horror. This is what happened to I Can't Believe It's Yogurt. On December 6th, it became the setting for a crime so brutal, it would forever be etched into the city's memory. The events of that night would unleash a mystery that would baffle investigators and haunt an entire city. 4 young girls, their lives cut short. Sometimes the monsters are terrifyingly real. Austin, in 1991, prided itself on being different. Keep Austin Weird wasn't just a slogan, it was a way of life. The city was a beacon of creativity. Crime existed, but a crime of this magnitude. The city was wrapped in a comfortable blanket of perceived security. That blanket was about to be ripped away. The yogurt shop was located in a North Austin strip mall. It represented everything that was supposed to be safe and wholesome about suburban life. This very ordinariness made the horror that followed even more jarring. The illusion of safety is a fragile thing. The events of December 6th, 1991 shattered that illusion. The city's innocence was lost. Who were these girls? They weren't just victims or statistics. They were daughters, sisters, friends. They had dreams, plans, inside jokes. They were the heart of this story. Eliza Thomas was 17, a Lanier High student, artistic and kind, working at the yogurt shop, earning her own money, looking forward to graduation and the future. Simply at work on a Friday night. Jennifer Harbison, 17, Sarah, 15, her younger sister. They came to hang out and help close. Jennifer with a big laugh. Sarah, gentle and sweet. Inseparable sisters, just helping out. Amy Ayers, 13, tagged along with the Harbisons, an energetic 8th grader who loved music. Just a fun night with older friends. Innocent and full of promise. 4 girls, 4 personalities, 4 interconnected lives. Close the shop, get a ride, head home. Maybe they talked about school, about boys, about music. Living in the moment, final hours, last shared laughs. Remember who they were. Just kids. Their lives were not just taken, they were stolen. What happened inside that yogurt shop? That is the question that has echoed through the years. Firefighters arrived at the North Austin strip mall responding to a fire at the I Can't Believe It's Yogurt shop. What they found inside was anything but routine. The bodies of the 4 girls were discovered in the back of the shop. They had been bound, gagged, and subjected to unspeakable violence before the fire was set. It was a forensic nightmare for the Austin Police Department. The initial investigation was a whirlwind of activity. Years turned into decades. The case went from being an active investigation to a cold case, then back again. Who committed this monstrous act? To understand this tragedy, you must know who was lost. They were not just names, they were the vibrant heart of this story. Eliza, 17, a senior with dreams. Jennifer, also 17, full of laughter. She came with her younger sister, Sarah, 15, and Amy, only 13. A friend of Sarah's. 4 girls. Their lives intertwined by friendship, brought together for simple teenage companionship. In 1991, Austin was a small, quirky city, proudly weird, safe and close-knit. The yogurt shop murders shattered that innocence, striking in a place everyone thought was safe. A bright, ordinary strip mall. Suddenly, the city's sense of security was gone, replaced by fear and disbelief. Austin would never be the same. December 6th began like any other night, 4 friends together at the yogurt shop, helping close up, laughing, making plans. Outside, a couple noticed 2 men inside with the girls, but saw nothing alarming. Behind the locked door, everything changed in minutes. The last normal night ended in violence, the shop's lights going out forever. The city's holiday cheer was about to be replaced by sirens and shock. The timeline is haunting. Last sale at 10 to 48 p.m. Shop closed, girls cleaning up. An officer patrolled twice, noticing nothing until smoke appeared just before midnight. Firefighters arrived, forced entry, and found devastation inside. The final minutes remain a mystery, marked by what-ifs and lost chances. For 4 young lives, time simply stopped. The girls were together out of friendship, helping, laughing, supporting each other. Their bond, so strong, may have made them resist, drawing a more violent response. 4 families, 1 tragedy, an entire community wounded. In the end, they should be remembered for their friendship, not just their loss. Firefighters expected a routine call, but found a nightmare. 4 girls bound, brutalized, the fire set to destroy evidence. The cheerful yogurt shop was now a crime scene of unimaginable cruelty. The city's worst mass murder had just been discovered. First responders became guardians of a horror they could never forget. Austin's nightmare had begun, written in smoke and ashes. When homicide detective John Jones arrived, the scene was a chaotic swirl of flashing lights, fire hoses, and grim-faced first responders. The smell of smoke and water hung heavy in the air, but underneath it was the metallic scent of blood. 4 victims, all young girls. It was bad. The water from the fire hoses had washed away potential evidence. The intense heat and smoke had contaminated everything. Investigators knew from the first moments that this would be the most difficult case of their careers. It's a race against time to collect evidence, identify victims, and find witnesses before the trail goes cold. These weren't just bodies in a crime scene, they were daughters, sisters, friends. The nightmare had begun for law enforcement, but they knew that soon they would have to deliver that same nightmare to 4 unsuspecting families. As the sun rose, the news began to spread. A fire at the yogurt shop. 4 teenage girls murdered. This was Austin, Texas. The news hit the community hard. The city awoke to a new fear. The yogurt shop was a place people knew. Now it was a symbol of horror. The police department was inundated with calls. The public was desperate to help. The community was grappling with a brutal crime. The victims were their peers. The murders felt like a direct attack on their world. The world suddenly felt darker, more dangerous. Austin's innocence had been stolen. It changed the character of the city forever. From the beginning, the crime scene was a forensic investigator's worst nightmare. The perpetrators used fire to cover their tracks. The intense heat destroyed potential evidence. Water from the fire hoses washed away blood, fibers, and microscopic clues. Investigators faced an immense challenge sifting through the charred remains. The bodies were critical evidence, but the fire had done its devastating work. DNA technology in 1991 was in its infancy, making collection and analysis difficult. This forensic nightmare set the investigation on a difficult path. Detectives relied on witness statements and psychological profiles. The lack of physical evidence created a vacuum filled with speculation and false leads. Amid the chaos of the investigation, a lead emerged from a young couple. Minutes before the fire, they'd found the yogurt shop locked. Peering inside, they saw Eliza Thomas, another girl, and two men. They assumed the men were customers or friends and left. This was the only eyewitness account of potential suspects. Who were these men? The couple's descriptions were vague. Police released composite sketches, plastering them across media. The city searched for the unidentified men. The last people seen with the girls, were they the killers or just customers? Investigators considered every possibility. With fuzzy descriptions, detectives chased shadows. Their identities remain a critical, unanswered question. In the days and weeks following the murders, the investigation was a frantic whirlwind of activity. Austin Police Department overwhelmed, threw every resource at the case. A task force was formed. Homicide unit, robbery unit, sex crimes unit. Case files quickly swelled. Witness statements, tips from the public, forensic reports. Despite massive effort, investigators struggled to find direction, like being lost in a thick fog. Clues appeared, then vanished. The lack of solid physical evidence meant no anchor. Investigation pulled in multiple directions by conflicting information. Early rumor connected to a satanic cult. Brutality plus cryptic symbols rumored at the scene. Detectives interviewed people involved in occult practices. Ultimately, no credible evidence. A major distraction. First of many dead ends. Another theory: robbery gone wrong. Cash register at the shop found open and empty suggested a surface level motive. A stick up. Investigators profiled local criminals and known robbers, but the level of violence seemed excessive. Binding, forensic evidence of sexual assault, deliberate fire at the scene. The robbery theory never fully explained the why. Lack of motive left the investigation adrift. Hard to find the who. Crime was both random and deeply personal. A robbery and a sadistic massacre. Contradictory nature made profiling difficult, disorganized or organized. Investigation felt like fighting a ghost. 4 victims and a city demanding answers, but no clear picture of the enemy. The chaos of the crime scene mirrored the chaos of the investigation itself. Years passed. The case grew cold. Then, in 1999, there was a breakthrough. It came from Morris Pierce, arrested on an unrelated charge. He claimed he was at the yogurt shop that night with Forrest Wellborn, Robert Springsteen, and Michael Scott. His story was inconsistent, but it was a lead. The confession provided the first real momentum in years. The focus shifted to the other 3 men. Detectives brought them in for questioning, under immense pressure. Robert Springsteen and Michael Scott eventually broke. They confessed. These confessions were hailed as the moment of justice, but even then there were whispers of doubt. The confessions felt wrong and were full of holes. Were they the words of guilty men or scared young men pushed past their breaking point? Who were these young men at the center of Austin's most infamous crime? They were teenagers in 1991, part of the same youth culture as the victims. Known to hang out at North Cross Mall, Their proximity made their involvement seem plausible. The prosecution's theory: these 4 young men went to the yogurt shop to rob it. Armed with a .22 caliber pistol, the robbery spun out of control. The girls were killed to eliminate them as witnesses, and the fire was set to cover their tracks. The confessions of Springsteen and Scott provided the backbone for this story. But the web connecting these men to the crime was tangled. Pierce recanted his story, and Wellborn maintained his innocence. Charges were dropped against him. Only Springsteen and Scott remained. Their confessions, the sole pillar holding up the case. The story was beginning to look murky again. While the investigation focused on 4 young men, the case had many other suspects, phantoms who emerged over the years, only to fade back into the shadows. For years, suspicion fell on 2 men in Mexico arrested for a similar crime. Then there was the strange case of the anonymous letter. The letter said one of the girls got a second gun and shot an attacker before she was killed. It remained another ghost, another what if. The existence of alternative suspects shows the chaos and confusion that defined the investigation. A reminder that in the yogurt shop case, nothing was ever as simple as it seemed. The trials of Robert Springsteen and Michael Scott began in 2001 and 2002. The atmosphere in the courtroom was electric. The city of Austin watched, holding its breath. The prosecution's case centered on the confessions. They played the interrogation videotapes for the jury. The defense attacked the confessions' credibility, showing how detectives had fed information to the suspects. The courtroom became a battleground over memory, truth, and justice. There was no DNA or physical evidence, only the words from those interrogation rooms. Both were found guilty. Springsteen received the death sentence, Scott life in prison, but for others, lingering doubt stayed strong. The convictions of Springsteen and Scott seemed to be the final chapter, but science had other ideas. 2 men sat in prison as DNA technology raced forward. Old 1991 lab methods gave way to modern precise testing. Mid-2000s, defense teams pushed for new DNA testing on carefully preserved evidence. It was a long shot, a last-ditch effort. The results came back and they were stunning. New tests identified an unknown male DNA profile from a vaginal swab of Amy Ayers. This was a bombshell. The DNA belonged to an unidentified male. It did not match Robert Springsteen. It did not match Michael Scott. It did not match Maurice Pierce. It did not match Forrest Wellborn. It did not match anyone in the national DNA database. A 5th mystery man was scientifically linked to the crime scene. The prosecution's foundation began to crumble. The unknown DNA directly contradicted confessions that named only 4 attackers. Prosecutors suggested another attacker could exist, but the theory was weak. The DNA evidence created a gaping hole in the prosecution's narrative. The Texas Court of Criminal Appeals reviewed the evidence. 2006 for Springsteen, conviction overturned. 2007 for Scott, conviction overturned. The court said they were denied a fair trial for not being able to cross-examine each other. But the DNA was the real unraveling force. The unidentified profile had rewritten the story. In 2009, Springsteen and Scott were released on bond after years behind bars. The release of Springsteen and Scott sent a shockwave through Austin. The case that everyone thought was closed was now suddenly painfully wide open again. For the families of the victims, it was an unimaginable blow. They had believed they had justice. Now they were told that the convicted killers were free. The wound, which had begun to scar over, was ripped open once more. The convictions they had worked so hard to secure had been undone by science. The question was no longer, did Springsteen and Scott do it? But who does the DNA belong to? But to this day, the identity of the man whose DNA was found on Amy Ayers remains unknown. The yogurt shop case was once again the city's darkest mystery. A story not of justice delivered, but of justice denied. Time does not heal all wounds. Sometimes it only deepens them. As the years stretched into decades, the yogurt shop case settled into a painful status quo. It was no longer a fresh tragedy, but a piece of Austin's history, a dark chapter that refused to end. For a new generation, the story was a local legend, a ghost story about a crime that happened before they were born. But for those who remembered 1991, the weight of the unresolved case was a heavy burden of justice that remained just out of reach. The physical location of the crime also changed. The strip mall was eventually renovated, but the ground itself felt haunted. The city had tried to pave over its scar, but the phantom pain remained. For the investigators, the case became a defining failure of their careers. With each passing year, that weight grew heavier. You know, a single crime can really redefine a city's identity. The yogurt shop murders did just that to Austin. Before that night, Austin saw itself as a safe, quirky haven. It was a place where community actually meant something, where folks looked out for each other. But that perception of safety was shattered in an instant. It was a turning point, a moment from which Austin would never fully recover its former innocence. A generation of young people grew up in the shadow of the case. The city grew larger, more anonymous. It was a loss of innocence on a civic scale. This series of failures eroded public trust. Austin today is a vastly different city, but the city itself remembers. The murders are woven into its modern history, a permanent part of its identity. For four families, the yogurt shop murders are a wound that never closes. For the parents of Eliza Thomas, Jennifer Harbison, Sarah Harbison, and Amy Ayers, the decades since 1991 have been a journey through grief. Their search for justice has been a marathon of heartbreak, a lifetime defined by a single horrific night. They've attended parole hearings and sat through trials, all in the hope of keeping the memory of their daughters alive. When the convictions were overturned, it was like losing their daughters all over again. They've learned to live with a hole in their lives that can never be filled. They carry the memory of their girls' laughter and dreams. It's a story of a lifetime of grief, a testament to a love that endures. A case like this haunts the people tasked with solving it. Over the years, dozens of detectives have worked on the yogurt shop case. For all of them, the case became a mission, a personal crusade. The file filled with the smiling school photos of the four victims was a constant, powerful motivator. The original detectives are mostly retired now, carrying a burden of regret. Even as they retired, the case was never abandoned. A new generation of cold case detectives has taken up the mantle. With new technology, they work with genealogists to to build a family tree for their mystery man. The case represents a collective determination not to let the 4 girls be forgotten. They're trying to provide an answer to 4 families who have waited a lifetime for the truth. The case may be cold, but the fire to solve it still burns. Ultimately, the story of the yogurt shop murders is defined by its questions. After more than 3 decades, the answers remain elusive. Who did this? Who were the men who vanished into the night? Was one of them the man whose DNA was left behind? The why is almost as haunting as the who. What was the motive? The level of violence suggests a rage that is difficult to comprehend. Without a motive, the crime remains a senseless act of violence. The case also leaves questions about the justice system itself. The story of Springsteen and Scott is a chilling tale about coercive interrogations. And so, we are left in the dark with haunting questions. Will the families ever get the answers they have sought? These questions hang in the air, a permanent part of Austin's story. They form the legacy of pain, doubt, and a dark mystery that refuses to be solved. More than 30 years have passed, the world has changed, yet the mystery of the yogurt shop murders remains. It has become one of America's most infamous cold cases, an enduring enigma. The story is a labyrinth of false starts and dead ends. The case stands as a stark monument to the limits of justice. Some truths may remain forever buried. The crime was a brutal tear in the fabric of a community, a wound that has never properly healed. So we are left staring into the abyss of the unknown. The story endures because of its profound, impenetrable mystery. Some questions may never have an answer. The yogurt shop case hinges on a microscopic clue, a strand of DNA. This genetic fingerprint left by an unknown male is the last hope for resolution. The investigation has become a search for a ghost, his identity locked in genetic code. New techniques in genetic genealogy offer a powerful new weapon. By searching for relatives in public databases, investigators build family trees, zeroing in on a potential suspect. For the yogurt shop case, it's the most promising path forward. It is a race against time, fraught with challenges, but worth running for the detectives and families. Finding him unlocks the final chapter. They hope this strand of DNA will lead them and the families out of darkness and into the light. Why do we return to the story of the yogurt shop murders? It continues to captivate and horrify us because it's more than just a true crime tale. It is a story about innocence lost, a community shattered, and a grief that has no end. We must tell their story for remembrance, to keep their memory alive. It ensures they don't become mere footnotes in a cold case file. Their legacy should be the brightness of their lives, not the mystery of their deaths. This case serves as a cautionary tale, a reminder of the fallibility of our justice system. We tell this story in the hope that one day it will have an ending. Until it is, we have a duty to remember, to question, and to hope.